Welcome, everyone, to our Jerusalem class. And today's subject is David and how David's geography and his spirit, his character also leads us into his prayer and all the heritage that we have of celebrating Jerusalem, celebrating the Lord's dwelling place, especially through Psalms and through the rhythm of prayer. We'll see if we get to the prayer part where we're going to at least start with David's geography today. And so, here's the screen share. And our recap, first of all, from last time, we talked about Moses, Joshua, Elijah, Elisha, prophet, disciple, and the transmission that happens right there at the place where Jesus is baptized. And today is first Sunday in Lent, and we've talked about the first reading. Sorry, it wasn't the first reading. I wish it was the first reading. The gospel refers to Jesus going to the desert for 40 days of fasting, right? Which is an obvious reference to Elijah and to Moses. Right after Jesus' baptism, he goes into this same desert at that same place where Moses arrived and where Elijah had. So it's right, the same place where Moses and Elijah, or sorry, Joshua and Elijah had both crossed over, as well as Elisha on dry land. And going out into the desert, he's following the footsteps of both Moses and Elijah, who, when did Moses and Elijah fast for 40 days in the desert? Moses, of course, on Mount Sinai to receive the law. Elijah, after when he's chased by Jezebel, and he walks 40 days to get to Mount Sinai, to get to Mount Horeb, and that's where the Lord is going to reveal himself in the whisper. So both of them have these 40 days that are connected to Mount Sinai, and that are going to be connected then. These two big prophets who had the revelation up on the mountain, they're also going to give Jesus his revelation on the mountain at the top of where the source of the Jordan River is, on Mount Hermon, at the Feast of the Transfiguration, that we're going to read next Sunday. So these things really connected. Also, we could say that the word 40, there's a 40 days of rain in Noah's story. There's the 40 days in the wilderness and going to the holy mountain for Moses and Elijah. But today we're going to talk about David. Where's the 40 significance in David? I can tell you weren't at the 7 or the 9 a.m. mass this morning. We'll get there. We'll get to that text. We'll get to the text. But these stories all really connected, and really connected with Jesus as well. That very good, very good. Okay, so these maps that I'm making especially for you. So that was the map for Moses and Elijah. We also looked at these amazing photos of St. George Monastery, where, in fact, Joachim went and fasted for 40 days in the desert, praying that Anne would conceive. Okay, so you see all these connections of the 40 days leading up to a revelation or gift. And okay, in this same place in the desert. So here's the photo of that monastery on the road from Jericho to Jerusalem. And there's the incredible aerial, and Jericho to the right. And this is called Wadi Kelt in today's maps. And whoops. Also want to mention again the ascent page of our website, where you might treat this as a Lenten journey, or a journey leading up to the trip, where there's different passages. Some of these passages we've been studying, and different also videos, and Way of the Cross, to give you a little reading plan and study plan to prepare for the trip or to keep growing in your faith. Today's topic: David's geography and Jewish prayer. And some of you got to see the trailer. Maybe we could show it again at the end of the class, of House of David. I think it's an incredible new series on Amazon Prime, just from last year. And really gives dignity to David's character. And here is David's geography. And at the top of the map, a place that's not very well known in our catechesis, but really important in the Bible, Shiloh, or in English, we might say Shiloh. But anytime we see an I in biblical words, it's probably an E, okay? Like Spanish or Latin or Italian. Shiloh. What was in Shiloh? How's it connected here?
The tent with the ark.
The tent with the ark, right? Until it was lost in battle to the Philistines, right? So it was almost 400 years that the Ark of the Covenant is laying in Shiloh after David comes into the Holy Land, after Joshua comes into the Holy Land with it. And this is the place where Joshua gathers the heads of the tribes to divvy up the Holy Land to the different territories. It's a really important place we don't learn about too much. That was the center for the three great pilgrimage feasts of Passover, Pentecost, and then Tabernacles, right? And so a really important place that also we hear about how is it connected with the story of David? Precursor to the story of David. We see Hannah coming to pray at Shiloh, right? And who's the prophet there at the time? Eli, right? And Eli is going to prophesy to Hannah that she's going to conceive who? Samuel, who anoints David. Okay. Not going to spend time on this on that story today, but you can see some of these different places that obviously are linked to David's story. We're not going to visit them all, and then a couple other places just to see where you are on the map, especially for you pilgrims. You see that your flight's going to arrive in Tel Aviv, which is a new modern city that's built just to the north of the ancient Jaffa, which was the only port city in Jesus' time, and sorry, the only natural port city, and then Herod started building Caesarea to the north. And then you see Emmaus, just on the way between Jerusalem and Jaffa, that are pretty much the same hills as a lot of David's story, just a little bit to the north. Samson is also from Torah, that's right in those same Judean hills, and Ashkelon and Gaza, a couple of the other cities of the Philistines that we hear about in the stories, both of Samson and of David. Okay, a couple other places where David slays Goliath, the Valley of Elah, Adullam Cave, where he hides from Saul. And you see the Wadi Kelt is where we just saw those photos. And En Gedi is a place that David speaks of in the Song of Songs. Okay. So just a couple of these places that we're going to concentrate on today, but here's a little picture of those Judean. Oops. What's going on? It jumped. Not sure.
Oh, shoot.
Let's pause the recording. Okay, technical difficulties are solved. We're back on our dock. And okay, the Judean Hills. And just so you see what it looks like today, this is on the road to Emmaus. It's really those same hills. And that we're going to walk. This is along the way too. This is the cave that I really thought looked a lot like the cave where David slays the lion in the House of David series. And okay, so let's read a little bit of scripture. First of all, just to see where does David come from? It comes from Bethlehem. Samuel did as the Lord had commanded him. When he entered Bethlehem, the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and asked, "Is it your visit peaceful, O seer? Trembling, are they hiding something? I'm not sure. He replied, Yes, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. So purify yourselves and celebrate with me today. He also had Jesse and his sons purify themselves and invited them to the sacrifice. Why is it so controversial, his visit? Because he just anointed a king who's successful at this time, right? If you saw that in the miniseries, it's really interesting how, yeah, we realized confusing it must have been for Samuel, because Samuel is the one who anoints, and like seems like it's going well with Saul, right? Why would you anoint another king? As they came, he looked at Eliab and thought, surely the anointed is here before the Lord. We saw in the film too that these are all warriors, David's brothers. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not judge from his appearance, from his lofty stature, because I have rejected him. God does not see as a mortal who sees the appearance. The Lord looks into the heart, etc., etc. He does this with the different sons. Then Samuel asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? Jesse replied, there is still the youngest, but he is tending the sheep. Samuel said to Jesse, send for him. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives here. Jesse had the young man brought to him. To them, he was ruddy, a youth with beautiful eyes and good looking. The Lord said, there, anoint him, for this is the one. Just thought the Amazon series helped me open my eyes to how difficult and crazy that situation was. And so we see, though, that there was something in David's heart and his character. Just wanted to mention, there's so many different stories about David. I think there's one that shows his special character, maybe several, but one that I think of often is when David's son is out to get him after he's already been in power, and he flees and with his company, and they're marching up the Mount of Olives, and there's this weird guy, Shimei, who comes at him throwing rocks, right, and cursing him. And what does David say? How does he react? May the Lord stand, like, who am I? Wow. Um, I just think what a lesson that and David's repentance. We realize it's a complex and deep heart that for us it's hard to just think. Sometimes we think these are the olden days where people were a lot more simple. This is 3,000 years ago. Okay, David's right around what year? Around 1,000. Whenever I think of biblical history, I often want to think of David to start with because 1,000 is so easy to remember, and then you can think, well, 400 years, before that is more or less time of uh, Moses, and then go back another 400 or 500 years is Abraham, so around 1900, 2000. So I think it's nice to think here's David right around 1,000. Wow, that there was such a complex character, somebody so understanding to be able to write his whole story with all of its ambiguities, right, and all of its ingenious uh, insight, conversion, and so there's something of his character that's just really deep. What was it like in Bethlehem at that time? I'm not sure, but we do have remains like wells and caves that were there at the time of David. And so this is right underneath what Shepherd's Field is today in Bethlehem, um, where perhaps the shepherds received the uh, the angels proclamation of Christ's birth. But I often think when I go there, think of David being the shepherd boy, and there's still sheep around, um, and next we want to move forward. Sorry, we're keep going on this story for one more. Samuel did as the Lord commanded him. When he entered Bethlehem, the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and asked, Isn't this the one we just saw? Sorry. Sorry. Oh yeah, because I divided this out. So sorry, I had made two slides of the one that before. So we just read the whole story. I gave you the map on here. You can see a little bit closer some of these places. And main places that we're going to focus on is Bethlehem, Hebron, and Jerusalem. That's where David spent most of his life. Pretty close, huh? He didn't go too far. And then the next map is also interesting. shows you the cut up of the different tribes of Israel. So you can see that big area of Judah. And then the Simeon, and then Benjamin is kind of going to be right in between the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And that's where Jerusalem is, right? You see Jerusalem, Jericho, and Emmaus are kind of all along this strip of Benjamin. So we still consider Jerusalem being part of Judah, but it's really right on the edge. Okay, Samuel did as the Lord commanded him. When he entered Bethlehem, the elders of the city came trembling to meet him and asked let me just see this. Sorry, I think I copied some of these. I should have proofread. Okay, then all the elders came to the king in Hebron. So we move towards the next place where Hebron. This place, as you saw on the map, it's just to the south, not too far from Bethlehem today. And Jerusalem and Bethlehem are like 10 15, yeah, 10 miles apart. Okay, so you're about 40 miles south of Jerusalem in Hebron. After mourning the death of Saul and Jonathan, David is going to gather a lot of respect and enthusiasm, but he still hasn't gained all of the people's trust yet. After mourning the death of Saul and Jonathan, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up into one of the cities of Judah?" The Lord replied to him, "Go up." Then David asked, "Where shall I go?" He replied, "To Hebron." Okay, all the tribes of Israel, skipping forward a little bit, all the tribes of Israel came to David in Hebron, and they said, "Look, we are your bone and your flesh. In days past, when Saul was still our king, you were the one who led Israel out in all its battles and brought it back. And the Lord said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel. You shall be ruler of Israel." This is really where Hebron's this decisive place where David becomes, takes his kingship, begins to rule. Okay, and Hebron, as we learned in the last teaching, this is the shrine in Hebron that was built above the cave where who's buried? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Who was the first one buried there? Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel's actually buried in Bethlehem, near Bethlehem. But Leah is buried there in Hebron. Okay, and the shrine that was built up, at least surely there was quite a shrine there before, but these rocks were laid by King Herod, and so it's just like that western wall, that base of the temple that we can still venerate, that's being excavated in Jerusalem, that was destroyed, right? But here in Hebron, it really wasn't destroyed. It was built up at different times, and St. Helen makes it into a church, and then the Muslims make it into a mosque. But it's really the same building that's standing as Hebron, as King Herod built it, and there's a place inside where you can look and see a cornerstone that was put into the wall or engraved by St. Helen to make it a church. And then there's a piece of the Kaaba stone from Mecca that's put into the side by the Muslims. So it's this really ancient, incredible shrine that Christians don't go to that I think is really important. And we see that the layer of importance of Hebron isn't just those old patriarchs and matriarchs, but also David, who actually rules from there for 7 years, and his general is buried there. Who's David's general? So Abner is Saul's general, that is, of course, David's really close with, and David's really sad when somebody slays him, because David starts to make a deal with Abner, but Joab, or Joab, something like that in English, Joab. Joab in English, great. And why are we wearing those ridiculous outfits? Because we're going on the mosque side of this. It's divided into a synagogue and a mosque, and when non-Muslims visit the mosque side, or even a liberal Muslim who doesn't have head covering and a hijab gets to put on one of these gowns. So the girls have fun with that.
I bet.
Okay, and then we head up to Jerusalem. David went to bring up the ark as of God from the house of Obed Edom. Sorry, we skipped a part, didn't we? Um, in the other slide, David was 30 years old when he became king. Uh, and he reigned for 40 years. Okay, here's that other 40. In Hebron, he was king over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem, he was king 33 years over all of Israel and Judah. Incredible. Huh? A 33, a 7, and a 40 in this story. Up to Jerusalem. David went to bring up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with joy. As soon as the bearers of the ark of the Lord had advanced 6 steps, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. Then David came dancing before the Lord with abandon, girt with a linen ephod. David and all the house of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and sound of horn. The glorious procession that you might liken to the Palm Sunday procession that's in the picture. It happens every Palm Sunday. That involves thousands of people. Incredible moment in Jerusalem each year. It's the biggest moment of Christian gathering in the Holy Land all year. It's Palm Sunday. And as the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, David's wife, looked down from her window, and when she saw King David jumping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. They brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place within the tent which David had pitched for it. Then David sacrificed burnt offerings and communion offerings before the Lord. When David had finished sacrificing burnt offerings and communion offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, distributed among all the people, the entire multitude of Israel, to every man and every woman, one loaf of bread, one piece of meat, and one raisin cake. Just need to hear the details in a story like this of the procession and the party, and even that little episode with Michal. Why did somebody write that in? You wonder. I really liked Michal in the first season of House of David. We didn't get to this incident, but just incredible story that this is also another moment of David's character where he's like why wouldn't I dance? This is um, dancing for the Lord, and Michal's jealousy or modesty or what, and it just makes us think, right? I don't know what conclusions you're going to draw, but something about David's character that dance without shame before the Lord's presence, and so that's all the teaching on David. I'm going to conclude the recording before I go to the next part about prayer, and I'll do a new recording for this. So, come on, recording. There we go.
You've never heard the term ephod, ephod?